Do I even remember how to do this? I don't know. Let's find out. Hello, my name is Jonathan and this is Jonathan's Days. This is where I talk about all of the things I get up to in the world of fibre and knitting, and maybe something a little bit different this time. This is episode 13 and it's been a minute since I've recorded an episode, so we have a lot to get through. I'm going to literally jump right in and not talk about anything else so far because I have 5 finished objects and 2 works in progresses and a little bit of acquisitions, and then something a little bit different at the end as well. So let's jump into finished objects first. I'm gonna talk super quickly about 2 things that were on the needles for either quite a while or the second time around. The first thing I'm gonna show is my Anker sweater. Let me pull back. So this is the Anker sweater. This is by PetiteKnit, and this is the my boyfriend size version, so it's sized for more masculine fit. And I knit this for my boyfriend using the yarn called for in the pattern, which was Les Garn Pure Gynt, and it's in the color, I believe, 6072. It'll be on the screen regardless. The screen will be correct. And I knit the extra small size, and I made this for my boyfriend for skiing. Well, I made it for him for life, but I specifically made it for a ski trip that we had a couple of weeks ago, and I finished it. It is a bit wrinkled because obviously he's been wearing it and enjoying it. It's a tad short, I'm not gonna lie, but I think it will kind of stretch out as he wears it, and it fits great. He really likes it. The color looks fantastic on him, and it's the second time I've knit this. So if you're more interested in hearing details about it, you can go back to the most recent episode, and then a couple of episodes back as well. I knit my own version in the same yarn, but just a different color. And the only modifications I made was adding short rows to the back, which you won't be able to see. It's more of a fit thing, but yeah, just here where after you split for the sleeves, I added short rows. I used the short row instructions from the Flax pattern, which is a free pattern by DRK Knits. So I used the short row instructions for that to add the short rows to this because the pattern doesn't come with short rows. And I feel like it kind of needs it, to be honest. Otherwise, the back can drop down a fair bit. But as you can see, it pulls up quite nicely. Yeah, this yarn, I love this yarn. I love my version of it. The yarn is a Norwegian wool. It's kind of known for being really workhorsey yarn, and it's absolutely fantastic. It, you know, is one of those things that I knew that I could make for my boyfriend and he'd wear over and over again. He actually, this is the second sweater I've ever made for him. The first one I've made, I can see it, it's over there, was a grey v-neck, and it was kind of a create your own pattern style. And I'm not going to show it to you because it's kind of, it needs a glean, and we can run through that some other time. But yeah, so that's my first finished object. It was pretty fairly decently close to being done in the last episode, but I've talked about this a lot, and a lot of people have been knitting this recently, so I feel like I'm not going to go over anything else new. But it is a fantastic pattern. It is also a good shout for like beginner knitters if you wanted to do your first ever jumper. I think this would actually be a pretty good shout for that. A lot of people ask me for first jumpers, and this is a good one, and it's also a good one, I think, people asking to make something for their partner. I think it's good for that as well because it's like quite a pleasurable knit and it's quite simple, so it's not going to be something that you kind of resent your partner for making, because it's a nice thing to knit. So you'll enjoy the process of making this, which is another kind of thing that goes towards eliminating the curse of making your partner a sweater or jumper. So yeah, so that's the Anker sweater by PetiteKnit, and that's my first finished object, and I'm blazing past it because we have a lot to get through and other things. The other finished object I'm going to do super briefly. I'm going to lift up my foot. It's my, oh, there it is. This is my, oh, it's felting a bit. Second pair of Curio socks by Andrea Mowry. It's knit using the yarns called for in the pattern, which is Retrosaria, Mondim, and Spincycle. This is my second pair, and I love both pairs. I've really I haven't taken nice pictures or anything, and they're not exactly very pretty looking if I got up close, because they're great socks, but also they're socks and they're quite a utility for me, so I haven't really taken really nice finished object photos because I've just been excited about getting them on my feet and wearing them. But they are done, and yeah, so I've made 2 pairs of the Curio socks back to back now, and I kind of needed a break from them. Not that they're annoying to knit or anything, but I moved on to a different pattern, which you'll see in a second. And I think I need a little break from sock knitting after this sock, but I can talk about that in future plans. But yeah, so those were kind of things that were on the needles for quite a long time, or things you've seen before if you've already been following the podcast or following me, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Again, they're both great patterns, both great yarns. I love Mondim. Everyone knows I love Mondim. It's one of my favorite sock yarns, and I have a lot of it in my stash in case of emergency. You know how we always have emergency sock yarn in our stash, us sock knitters. So those were the 2 kind of old finished objects. And it's been quite a while since I've recorded, so I've gotten through quite a bit of knitting since we last spoke. I guess let's start. I'm going to do what I'm wearing in a little bit. Let's start with these other 2 pieces first. The first one I kind of cast on and knit fairly, I think after the socks. Yeah, after I finished the socks, I cast this on right away. If you watched the previous episode, you would have seen, because I got the yarn for it. So this is just a super simple cowl. So this is a brioche cowl. It's called the Night and Day. It's part of the Shibui Knits and Les Garçon collaboration. And the colors of the yarn, if I come up close, is Soirée is the darker color, and Rose is the lighter color. And you can probably see the kind of slight pinkiness a bit more when it's flipped this side. It's reversible. It's a really, really nice knit. The nest yarn is kind of like, I would have shown it in the last episode. It's like a netting with the fiber within the netting. It's kind of hard to describe, and it's actually, you don't really see it in the actual finished project. You don't really see it on the skein. Let me see if I can get right up close. You might be able to see it just a tiny bit. But I kind of saw this as a really kind of, again, another utility kind of piece. You know, as much as I enjoy really decorative, fun process knits, I also like to wear my knits and use them, and this is something I wanted for skiing, so I kind of rushed through it fairly quickly to get it done. It's my second ever brioche project, and it's one of those things. I love brioche. I really, really love brioche. I want to do something a bit more challenging this year when it comes to brioche. It's super warm. It's one of those ones when I was, out in the cold, it really stopped the wind. You could really feel it stopping the wind. And so it's but it's nice and light and airy at the same time, it's just really, really wonderful and super simple, quite a utility piece rather than a really, really decorative piece, even though it is quite decorative. The other thing I will say, so this project and the next project I'm going to speak about, I had to restart both of them. This one was because it was a provisional cast on, and what went wrong with it? It went so wrong. I lost patience with it, first of all, because it's one of those knits where it was late at night, and I don't know about you guys, I kind of go into a crazy, weird focus, but kind of erratic focus zone sometimes with knitting late at night, and I really kind of want to get something done, or get past the cast on or get past a certain section before I go to bed. And the problem with that is that you're tired. So was it a provisional? Yeah, so you kind of knit a bit, you did a provisional cast on, you knitted one color, you changed to another color, and then you were like folding them and knitting them together to kind of create this, wait, no, that's the cast off edge, there you go. Create this nice edge, and it's super, super nice. But it's one of those things where they didn't, there was a problem with the increases, first of all. I struggled with the increases. I struggled with how tight joining the two pieces of work together, and I struggled with just getting them to line up, and yeah, it was just really, really bad. Oh, and that was what it was. It was, you did the provisional cast on with a waste yarn, and I couldn't get the stitches off the waste yarn onto the new needle. It was probably my own fault for the choice of waste yarn that I used, because I think I used a non-superwash yarn, which kind of like stuck to the actual yarn. So in the end, when I redid it the following day, instead of using waste yarn, I used a cable from one of my interchangeable needles, so it was already on the cable for when it needed to be joined together. In order to do that, I had to change the increase. So the pattern might have been make one left, make one right, and I ended up doing like a backwards loop even. Possibly. I can't remember which increase I switched to. I remember I had to like change it. Maybe it was a knit front to back and I had to change it to something else. Anyway, it took some figuring out and some finagling. And so I learned a lot from it, but I also think it would, like, it's one of those things where they didn't specify a particular provisional cast on. They just said like your choice of provisional cast on. And it's one of those things where it's nice with knitting that there are so many different methods to achieve whatever technique. But at the same time, I do appreciate when a pattern says, you know, cast on using your preferred provisional cast on method I used, or for the sample, or, you know, our preferences. You know, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that. I don't know if you feel like being told what style cast on to do, but I always appreciate when a designer says, I use this style of cast on or this style of bind off. I think it really, really varies, and I don't know how people feel about it. I guess some people might not like being told, but I guess it's one of those things that when you're a more advanced knitter, it's easier to swap techniques. But when you're relatively new, it is difficult to know what is the best kind of technique. Anyway, I digress. Regardless, this caused me a lot of stress for a very simple garment, and had me literally cutting a bunch of yarn, so much so that I was worried that I was going to run out of yarn. So I'm really happy with my nice little cowl that's reversible, and I'm going to use it a lot. I mean, it's getting warmer, so I probably won't use it that much. But it was definitely a struggle at the beginning. Sometimes it's the simplest things that cause much of a struggle. The yarn's nice. I like it. It'll be interesting to see how it holds up. It's my first time ever using Shibui. I want to try their other bases as well. But yeah, I liked it. It was simple. And the brioche was really, really fun. Once I got into the brioche, it kind of became, it replaced my sock project as my lunchtime knitting. And I really enjoyed the kind of the rhythm of brioche and all that. I did make a mistake. Well, it wasn't a mistake well, it was a mistake. It was just more of a, like I was brioche purling instead of brioche knitting for a while, so I had to like tink back. So it was quite good to get that practice of tinking back in brioche. I haven't gotten to the stage where I can fix mistakes dropping down in brioche, but I can definitely knit backwards and tink in brioche. So that's pretty good. Always learn something. So that was that one. Lots of yarn overs and good times. Okay, so next up, finished object wise, is going to be this. Oh, this is in chronological order as well. I'm going to hold it up and we can look at it briefly, and then I'm going to insert photos when I talk about it because it doesn't look that impressive not on a body. And as well as that, I've got massive ends hanging out with hanging out of it because I haven't figured out exactly how to weave in the ends just yet. So yeah, that's fine. Cool. So this is it. There you can see the massive end. Let me flick that over and we'll pretend we don't see it. Oh, it's a lot of ends. Jeez. Cool. So this is my pure mesh pullover, and this is by James and Watts. This has been, well, it's been all over my Instagram feed and has been for quite a while. And I did mention it when I received the yarn for it a while ago, episode or two ago. And I've been very excited to make it. I'm gonna hold it up a little bit longer so you can see it's like all mesh, or like essentially lace knitting, I guess you'd say. And it is knit out of La Bien-Aimée, Felix, and this is in the color Direwolf. So this hasn't been blocked. And so this is knit, this is the medium size, and this is kind of how the pattern is called for. What I am going to do is, you can see here, it's knit bottom up. Well, it's I don't want to give away anything, but it is knit bottom up, and kind of, is it? I don't think you ever really, do you go in the round? Maybe briefly you go in around. I think it's mostly knit flat actually, now that I think about it, and seamed. So yeah, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm probably going to pick up and add ribbing here. Even though it's bottom up, I'm going to add in the ribbing to pull it in, because when I wear it, it goes up, like it rides up my body, and it will tend, it's probably a bit short actually. In the pattern they spoke about adding like the moment where you can add more length, so they did flag that, but because of the kind of properties of the fabric, it's very difficult to even swatch or kind of predict lengths or anything like that. So it's like a super stretchy, elastic kind of fabric. So yeah, I'm gonna stop holding it up. So this I also had to start over again, because it's essentially like lace knitting. Well, I mean, it's knitting mesh essentially, or netting you could even say, and you knit it on 8mm needles, I believe, and Felix is a lace weight yarn. So the reason I had to restart is because like my needle dropped, because I have used metal needles, and my needle dropped within the lace, and stitch fell and stuff happened, or I missed it and I kept going. I can't exactly remember, but regardless, I was like, there's no way I can fix this. Like, I'm not experienced in lace knitting at all, of any, like, you know, even though it's kind of, it's the same pattern the whole way over, I didn't really know how to fix it at that point. So I had to I wasn't very far, but I had to restart it, and I was very proud of myself making it, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't like constantly like going when a metal needle like slipped out of it. I was like, you know, when you're like falling asleep and you like go and you like grab something, like that's literally how I was half the time making this, because really big metal needles, which I rarely use I mean, I think a 6mm is probably the biggest needle I've used recently with sort of regularity. Using such a large needle in metal with lace weight is definitely a challenge, and I was challenged the entire time. But I kind of I was quite definitely intimidated by how it was constructed, and I just kind of barreled forward and just kind of kept going with it. There's mattress stitching involved with it as well, which I had only ever done in the school run headband, was the only time I'd ever done a mattress stitch. And this is obviously like a mesh lace fabric that you're mattress stitching together, so it, you know, it all worked out fine once you just kind of got into it. But like thinking about it, I was like quite intimidated by the fact that I had to seam a very long way up each side of the body. I should have had the photos of me wearing it. It's not my usual style garment, but I really am happy with the techniques I've learned, the skills I've developed, and it's something completely different. And you know, if I was to stick to everything an average, you know, boring man would make, I'd only be making plain raglan, you know, basic jumpers my whole life. So I think it's fun to make something completely different. I'm probably not going to wear this very often, but it took up a really small amount of yarn and it was really enjoyable to do. And you know, I think that's the fun of the craft, is kind of pushing yourself out of your boat. Since I took up knitting, there's lots of things I'm wearing now that I wouldn't have worn previously. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to finding some event or some, you know, some day I'm feeling a little bit sexy to wear it on. And you'll see from the photos that I've kind of styled it with like a tank top, and I've styled it with a long sleeve. On James's Instagram, they have a bunch of different ways to style it and wear it. And if you look up the hashtag, like it's so cool how different people have styled it in such a like diverse way. Like it's super fun. So, you know, don't take life too seriously. Have a fun, sexy mesh moment and knit it up because it's something you've never done before and you push yourself out of your comfort zone. Or maybe you're someone who wears mesh all the time and you didn't realize you couldn't knit mesh. You can. It's one of those things when people say like, oh, I like your blah, blah, blah. And you're like, thanks, I made it. Or thanks, I knit it. Like a normal jumper, it looks like a knitted garment, but people probably wouldn't realize that you can knit like sexy mesh as well. So yeah. So that's the Pure Mesh Pullover by James & Watts and knit in Labia and Aimée. And I highly recommend knitting it up. It's a super interesting, challenging, fun knit that is just cool. So yeah, highly recommend that. Okay, so the next finished object is what I'm wearing. I'm sure you're like, oh my god, talk about what you're wearing, for goodness sake. I'm there. So this would you have seen at all? Probably not. Probably you wouldn't have heard of anything about this, because I got one of the yarns at Unravel, and it was in my previous special episode about Unravel, which was the Qing Fibre Veranita. This is all I have left of it, which is actually a lot because it's definitely a lot because it's silk and cashmere, so it's like super thin. It's like tissue, and I paired it with this. So this is Olann Meara Mill yarn, and this is in the color Mist. And I held the Olann double and one strand of the Qing fiber to create this fabric. I'm gonna stand up so you can see. And this is the White Mountain sweater. This is by Midori Hirose. So this brings it up to my third Midori Hirose pattern I've ever made, and the second one this year. And it is a like, I don't want to say basic, simple raglan construction. It's like oversized, so I've got lots of like that's my there you go, that's what would you this is like the perfect demonstration of like negative ease and positive ease. This is like positive ease, negative ease. So yeah, so it's like oversized, but it's quite nice because again, this is like the pushing myself out of my comfort zone episode, because this is like a style I wouldn't normally wear. So I was actually quite excited to like do something a little bit different, because I think a lot of my sweaters are quite fitted. So this one has like a little bit of a wider neck, which isn't normally what I go for. I like quite high up crew necks, quite tight crew necks. And I like things that fit tight on my body, but this is like a little bit of a different shape for me. And it's one of those things where I probably wouldn't have made this if Midori Hirose didn't have a picture or like make a sample and have a picture on the pattern page and on Ravelry of a man wearing it, and it looked so cool. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my god, I want to make it just like that. So it's funny how I would have never thought of making this pattern if I hadn't seen someone like me wearing it. So it kind of speaks to how nice it is to see diversity within pattern pages, you know? So yeah, it's one of those things now where it's like really kind of opened my mind to be like, okay, think beyond who is modeling it and think of you modeling it. So yeah, so I'm super, super happy with it. It's knit on 6mm needles, I think, so it's a pretty big gauge, and I cast this on and brought this skiing with me as like my after skiing before like drinks knitting, because it's like simple and plain, and I could just enjoy some chill knitting for the week that we were skiing. And it was called White Mountains, so I felt it was nice to be knitting on White Mountains in White Mountains. So yeah, I did panic probably on the first day of skiing when I got through the first skein of the Olann yarn, and I panic bought 2 more skeins of this. I got 1 skein a while ago, and then to make it I got 2 more skeins, which brought it up to 4. And then I started knitting, and I got like maybe a third of the way through the yoke, or a little bit, maybe half the way through the yoke, and was nearly finished with yarn. And then I thought, oh my god, this is like oversized, there's no way I'm gonna have enough yarn. So I panic bought 2 more skeins of this, the Olann. I knew I definitely had plenty of the Qing fibre, so that was fine, but I panic bought 2 more skeins. So the first 3, so the original skein I got directly from Olann, the other 3 I got from Tribe Yarns in Richmond, which I've been to before, and I took their last 3 skeins of this because they only had 3 left. So then I was panicking because this yarn has been out, this colour has been out for a little while, and I was worried about dye lots. So then I got 2 more skeins from This Is Knit, which is based in Dublin, and I didn't need to. I only needed a bit, maybe a third of the last skein or half of the last skein. I love Olann, and I love this yarn, and I love this color, so I'm gonna make use of it. But I didn't need to panic so much, maybe panic a little. Trust my numbers, trust that I had calculated it pretty well. But yes, that was the yarn. I am so happy with it. I've worn it 2 or 3 times now, and it's only been dry about a week. It's like a completely different style for me, but I'm really enjoying it. It has, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I like the raglan. The raglan detail here is quite nice. I'm not going to kind of give away anything regarding that, but it's one of those things where this is the 3rd of their patterns that I've made, and the way that someone, I think in a comment, described them as such an engineer, and I absolutely agree. This is such a simple knit, but there's so many things that are thought of. There's so many different kind of weights and combinations of yarns that you can do, and it's the size range is like maybe like a dozen sizes, if not more. So I made the medium 2 size. There's a medium 1, like there's tons of sizes, and I think it's one of those things where if all the other things that I've knit or finished objects that I have so far today, they're all using the yarn that's called for in the pattern, whereas this yarn combination is just something that I was actually inspired by Max, because he made something using Olann and the Qing fibre as well, but applying it to a completely different pattern for me. But this pattern really allows for that. It's one of those things where it's like mix and match yarns, and then do your swatch, and then follow the instructions. You know, it's that easy to do. And I think because it's like it is oversized, it's meant to have about 20 centimeters of positive ease is what's recommended. You know, you kind of have that leeway to kind of play with yarns and have that oversized look. The other thing that I do enjoy about it is that if I was to go and buy something oversized, okay, it would be easy to find something that's oversized on my width-wise on my body here, but usually when you buy a garment, it'll mean like the sleeves are longer, or the hem, you know, the length on the body is wrong and the width is wrong, or well, oversized. So what I like about this is that it's oversized where the designer wants it to be, but it fits me on the sleeves, it fits me on the length, it fits me on the neck, you know, it fits in all the places I want to. So it's been quite nice to kind of make something oversized that fits, if that makes sense. And it's one of those things that all the techniques in the pattern are explained, like it's like a book, the pattern that you get. So if you want to make, I think, a really well-designed, super well-designed, fun to knit pattern that's just pleasurable and a really great way to like play with yarn combinations, I highly recommend the White Mountains. I absolutely love it. Do a little spin. So yeah, I really, really like it. I don't know if I'd make it again, but I'm super, super thrilled with it. And it's interesting because you can see how so this is the correct dial, how the silk cashmere, the Qing fiber, has like lightened the color a little bit, which I quite like. But the mist has it was just beautiful to work with, and it has like such depth of color, which I really, really enjoyed. And it's kind of turning spring here in the UK finally, and today like I just felt like this was like sparkling outside between the silk and the cashmere and the depth of color that Olann finds. It's just amazing. So I'm so happy with this, really, really enjoyed it. And I'm going to be wearing it as much as I can. I'm going to be wearing it with shorts. I'm sure it's kind of airy like that. It's one of those ones that'll be probably cool in the spring and warm in the winter. And I'm really, really thrilled with it. So can't recommend it enough. That's my White Mountains, which I made on the White Mountains. And yeah, that's all my finished objects. I know, it's quite a bit, isn't it? It's quite a bit. Let me pop these down. I got a little pile going over here. Works in progress. Ooh, why don't we do a little bit of a different finished object very briefly? So we are a knitting podcast, but this year I decided to, you know, widen my horizons and explore things. So I found this wonderful place in London called Maketown, and they have workshops, all sorts of workshops. You can learn to knit there, you can learn to weave there, you can learn, what else can you learn? Weaving, knitting, probably do crocheting as well, any kind of craft you can think of, but they also do sewing. So I went and took a sewing class and made myself a little project bag. So this class was their Learn to Sew Basics class, where you learn to sew a little project bag. So this is my little project bag. I'm not going to talk about it too long in case you're one of those people who's like, ugh, sewing. But I really, really enjoyed it. So it's lined. So mine's kind of like a tropical pina colada lemon lime project bag. And I've got some skeins of yarn in it to give it a little bit of a shape. But I really, really enjoyed it. It was like an evening. It was like two or 3 hours in the evening of learning how to thread a machine and how to work the machine, basic stitches, and yeah, we put together this amazing drawstring project bag, which is my preference with project bags, because as a knitter I do not like project bags with zips. I feel like zips should not be found on knitting project bags. I don't know if that's a sassy opinion, but for me it's like, of course, it's something like this Qing fiber will just get caught in a zip, so I think folding and drawstrings are the way to go. But yeah, but I really, really enjoyed it. And so hopefully next month I'm going to do the next class up, which is how to make a pair of trousers, so stay tuned for that. And if you're based in London or the UK, I highly recommend Maketown for learning lots of fun crafty things. And so hopefully this year it will get to a point where I could have a whole outfit that I've made myself. So yeah, it's don't worry, I'm not becoming a sewing podcast, but it was fun to learn a new skill and spend an evening doing something different rather than just like vegging in front of the TV. So yeah, so that's my little project bag that I made all by well, not all by myself, with guidance, but I made. So yeah, so that's technically another finished object this week. So yeah, so let's get on to works in progress. I only have 2, and I feel like that's fair since I've got so many finished objects. The first one is a pair of socks. As I mentioned earlier, I like to always have a kind of smaller project that I can take with me at work and work on my lunch, and then also a bigger home project. So this is my next whip. It looks so strange right now. This is the DRK Everyday Sock by Andrea Mowry. I think I might have mentioned about wanting to cast this on, but basically it's a ribbed sock, toe up, and with I believe this is a Flegel heel, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm pretty sure it is. It'll be hard to see in this, but you kind of create a gusset and increase here, and then you do like the heel is almost like a little triangle heel. And it looks a bit long, but I did try it on and it does fit me. It also generally looks a bit funny. I find ribbed socks look a bit funny unless they're actually on a foot. And I'm just on the leg now, and here we go. I think I'm going to try knitting till I run out of yarn, depending on how high. I don't know if it'll make a knee-high sock. We'll see. So this is the yarn. Yep. This is Garthnor. Ooh, caught it. This is Garthnor Snowdonia sock in the color Idval. You would have seen this in a way long ago episode. I'm trying to knit through my stash as best I can. I think I've went through a real sock yarn phase, so I'm trying to get through that as much as I can. I'm also kind of thinking that I want to try doing the sock tube. Mel from Cozy Cardigans, that's what she does, is she makes like a really long tube for her kind of tray knitting, which is kind of like what this is for me almost, and then puts in the heels, toes, and cuffs afterwards. And I think that's what I might do for my next pair, because I've done afterthought heels once, but I've never done kind of a tube before, so I think it might be nice to just have a tube that's just kind of laying around that I can just always just do stockinette on. The pattern calls for 2.25, but these are 2.5 millimeter needles, just circular needles. I switched to magic loop for the gusset, which I think was a mistake for me because I got ladder. Well, I think I get kind of ladders, it's kind of loose in places. So for the second sock, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to switch to magic loop for the heel. So for the toe and the heel, I'll do magic loop, and then for the rest of it, I'll just do on my small circulars. This is the first time I'm using this base of yarn, the Snowdonia sock by Garthnor, but I've made 2 pairs of socks from the Pentland base, which I feel like is not super dissimilar. It's also kind of a marled yarn, so I feel like they'll behave the same way. The other thing I want to mention on this is that the sock looks a bit long and it fit my foot fine, but it was something that oh my god, Woolly Mammoth Fibres, Emma from Woolly Mammoth Fibres mentioned to someone else, was it Mel? I can't think. Anyway, she mentioned to someone else that non-superwash yarns on socks, which this is, because they kind of felt more than regular socks, they shorten in length on the foot, so it's a good idea to knit your non-superwash socks slightly longer, because as you wear them they'll shorten. And I've definitely found with my socks, which all are non-superwash apart from the Spincycle that are in these Curios, I can definitely feel my heel being pulled on some of them from the felting. So I think that definitely rings true. So the fact that this looks a little bit longer is actually fine for me because I think it will shorten as it felts. But I love this yarn. I love how it smells. It's like sheepy in the best way, and I just like, I know that I could put these in hiking boots and just go hike somewhere in the hills where the sheep are, and it will work great. So I've really been enjoying working with that, but I think after all this 2x2 rib, I will want to do a tube. Probably with some of the Olann sock yarn I have, because sometimes you get sick of ribbing and you just want to just knit forever, don't you? So that is my first work in progress. DRK Everyday Socks by Andrea Mowry. I did start it during her Spin It to Knit It cal, but I definitely wasn't going fast enough to finish them in time. I don't think I'm a big knit-along person in general, because I go to the beat of my own drum when it comes to making things. But anyway, yes, let's move on to the final whip. So the final whip, if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen. So this this is what happens when you don't make episodes to your regular schedule and you forget what you've said and what you haven't said. But basically, I mentioned getting this yarn. So I did mention getting this yarn. So this is made out of the Corrie Confetti by Aimée. There you go. It's just wonderful. So cool. It's like a confetti cake to me. And I shared when I got this, I don't think I shared what I wanted to make with it, because I was very excited about what I wanted to make with it, and part of me wanted to be the first person to make this pattern with this yarn, but somebody else beat me, which is fine. It was good to see how it would turn out. It's not a competition, but I knew when this yarn was released that this is the pattern that I wanted to make it with. So this is it. This is my Billie pullover knit in Aimée Corrie Confetti in the grey bow color. Those of you who also watch Rebecca Creabea, that's where I first saw the Billie pattern. I believe she tested for it, and then she had that like yoke photo that like just went viral on the knitting Instagram because it was so beautiful and amazing. But since then, I've been obsessed with the pattern, and when I got this yarn, I knew that I wanted to make the Billie with it, because when they released it, there was another pattern that they had knit up the confetti in, and it had this cable stitch, and I just thought it was beautiful, so I knew that it would look amazing on a cabled project. I do want in some point in my future life to have like a classic cream kind of cabled knit, or a navy one, just because Ireland, and so it would be good to have something really, really traditional. But I loved, and like the sample, so this is by Sari Nordland, which I don't think I mentioned. The one on the pattern is in cream, which is like great for cables and shows it off so nicely, but I just love the thought of like something that looks quite traditional but with all the flecks of confetti color. So I'm going to get up close so you can see the details and how it looks. And it's so good. It is so good. Oh my god. It looks quite small when I hold it up to me, but obviously you'll block it out and stretch it a bit. I've tried it on and it fits. It seems like it fits really, really well. It is top down, but you do pick up the neckline. Knit that. In the pattern it calls for a folded over neckline, but I don't really like folded over necklines. I feel like they look too bulky. So I just did a normal one with a tubular bind off, which looks a bit strange, but I hope it blocks out okay. This is my first, well, it's definitely my first cable project since I started back knitting in earnest at the end of 2020, but it's probably, oh yeah, because I have mitts and stuff, so it's probably my first, like, it's my first all over big cabled project, and I gotta say, it's been challenging, but I've been super addicted to it. Like this has been a week's worth of knitting maybe. And as soon as I'm done this, I'm probably not gonna edit it straight away because I want to do more on the sleeve. Once I started and I did the very first row which has cabled, I got about 2/3 through the first row cabling with a cable needle and was like, oh my god, I can't do this with a cable needle, it's going to take forever. So before I finished the first row, I learned how to cable without a cable needle. I used the Brooklyn Tweed video, which I believe it's Jared Flood is demonstrating how to do it, and it's a little bit scary because you have to like pull your stitches off your needle and kind of hold them, pinch and hold, and put your other needle into them. But because this is a non-superwash wool, like the stitches hold really, really well. That being said, I've kind of dropped a lot of stitches, like I've had to have the crochet hook nearby to pick them up and put them back on again. And I'm definitely slow going with this. He says 1 week of knitting, slow going. But, you know, compared to this, like this took a bit longer because I wasn't knitting that often on it, but I would have flown through this compared to this. I am using a cable needle. This cable here is like 3 stitches, so I can't get my needle into, I just find it difficult, so I do use a cable needle for that, and I do use the metallic wristband that I showed in the Unravel video, the one from Hide and Hammer, so that's been really, really handy. And yeah, so this is about, so from here to the body was 2 skeins of yarn, and then I've started the first sleeve just yesterday. I'm hoping that I have 5 skeins of grey bow number 1, and then I was worried that it wouldn't be enough because it's a cable sweater, so I got another skein, but I could only find grey bow number 2, which is a slightly different colour. So I hope I can get away with 5 skeins. If not, I mean, I'll know by the time I finish the first sleeve, because if I can get a sleeve out of 1 skein, then I should have enough to finish the body. And if not, I will use the other color for just the ribbing at the bottom, and hopefully it won't be too much of a difference. It's one of those things where I'm like, maybe you can't see it, but then I show my boyfriend, he's like, oh yeah, it's definitely a different color. I was like, damn. So, yes. The other thing about this is I'm knitting it because I'm trying to get it finished for the end of April, because Aimée of La Bien-Aimée is coming to Loop in London, so I'm going to go visit the store then, probably pick up some more Corrie worsted, and she's there with the worsted book, which you would have seen before from Lina, and I'll bring my book obviously for her to sign. But if you know, I've made the yesteryears from that book, so the question is, do I wear the yesteryears or do I wear this? I feel like this is like different, but then the other one is from the book, so I don't know. I might wear this and keep the other one in my bag. We'll see. Wear both, go to the bathroom, do a costume change. Like, oh hello, it's me again, wearing something different. But yeah, I'm fully addicted to this. I can't wait to have it finished and to wear it. I'm really, really enjoying it. I was super intimidated by the pattern when I first kind of opened it up and started looking at it, because it's all charts. Like, it's just like, there's 1, 2, like there's 4 or 5 charts and using 3 charts at once. So I did find that very intimidating to begin with, but I've kind of, you get into the rhythm and you get into the swing of it. You know, one thing about knitting is that it's so repetitive that you do pick it up and you do kind of learn the patterns essentially. So now I'm at the point where, I do have to count my rows with a row counter, but I know the cable patterns, so it's pretty easy going. The yarn itself, it's obviously, there's Corrie worsted, which I've used before, and this is Corrie confetti, so they're the same weight, I believe, and they are the same weight, yes, but this has recycled bits from La Bien-Aimée, so it's super enjoyable to knit with because you like have a little fleck of color that comes through. One thing is though, you see here, like these ones, sometimes they're like really thick, so that's been like a little bit challenging, especially when you're cabling, that they're quite thick, and sometimes you don't really realize that something is 1 stitch or 2 stitches because it's so large. And let me see here. Yeah, so, you know, here and here, you know, if you did it in a solid color, it would really show off the cabling. And I think it still looks absolutely beautiful, but you are, you know, throwing a rainbow at it at the same time. So it's what I wanted, but it is something to be aware of, that the bits on the confetti are like extra. They almost seem extra. They're not like within the yarn all the time. They're kind of on top of it. So it's just something to be aware of. I think the confetti looks best on texture, in my opinion, but it's such a blast. It's so much fun to knit with. So I think that's part of the reason why I've been so addicted to this, because it's kind of like Spincycle, where you're kind of waiting for what's the next little fleck of color to come through. And it's also extremely dangerous because, like, part of me is like, ooh, like these are all Lab Anime colors. So I'm like, ooh, what's that? I want something made out of that. Oh, I want a jumper made out of this. Oh, that one's really nice. So I don't know, I'm gonna be that weirdo in a few weeks asking Aimée, what color is this little bump here? Because I would like a sweater's quantity. You know? So yeah, it's great. I'm addicted to it. It's gonna be done the next time you see me for sure, because I'm just blazing through it. And for Easter break, I have no plans to do anything but knit on it. So I can't get enough. So yes, that's my other whip, which is the Billie Pullover by Sari Nordland, made in Lab Anime, Corrie Confetti, Grey Bone. Okay, cool. So finally, acquisitions. I don't have a lot of acquisitions compared to before. It's actually, ooh, let's focus on my face. So I don't have a lot of acquisitions. I think I've been acquiring plenty of yarn recently, but I do have 2 sweaters quantities that I got recently. The first is some knitting for Olive, which I got which I wasn't planning on getting, but they were running the donations for Ukraine with over a weekend, and they raised a wonderfully crazy amount of money, which was fantastic. I always admire the generosity of knitters. And so I picked up a slipover quantity of the yarn, and I also got the Sunday slipover, I think, pattern from PetiteKnit, because they were also doing donations off from pattern sales. So yeah, both of those things I got recently. So the knitting for Olive I got is their merino. There you go. And of course I had to try, look at me pushing myself out of my comfort zone, the mohair. So this is the soft silk mohair. So fluffy. So I'll be holding these together, and these are both in the color slate gray. I'll be holding these together to make the slipover, and yeah, I don't know how, you know, people love mohair, but I don't know, it looks fine to me. It doesn't look particularly, I don't know, I don't see a lot of dudes wearing mohair, but when I look at pictures of mohair items, I'm like, well, it just looks like nice fabric. And the softness of this is like, it's on another level. Like this is like cashmere. This is the Qing fiber from earlier. This is like cashmere and silk. I don't know, it's interesting. Why are knitters like this? Why are we like this? But anyway, so yes, I've got these to pair together just to make a slipover, because I think it will be a nice, quick, pleasurable knit, and also good for spring, summertime. I know it'll be warm, but I've been wearing my other slipover with like just a t-shirt, and I'm super excited to try this and knit with this. So I'm thinking that once my DRK Everyday Socks are done, I will cast on the slipover and use the slipover as my lunchtime at work project, because it's it looks, once you kind of get into the body stockinette, it should be fairly simple and easy. So I got 5 skeins of each. Yeah, 5 skeins of each. And I'm really excited to see what all the fuss is about, you know, and find out if mohair is for me. Who knows? Is it a new chapter? Look at me. Oversized things, mesh things, mohair things. It's a new year, a new dawn for me. So that was one of the things I picked up. And then my only other acquisition, no big deal. Nothing too crazy, nothing too wild, you know. It's just another sweater's quantity of Corrie Confetti, and I picked the one with the really banjaxed label. Oh my god. Give me a pretty skein. Why are none of the skeins pretty? They've traveled so far. Okay, here we go. This is the latest Corrie Confetti color. Oh my god. It's too good. Okay. So, this is the new color, which is called Nightfall. And I mean, come on. How could I not? How could I resist? It's so good. Now, in the grey bow, there's definitely flecks of all colors, but I think for this one, they tried to do more neons because it's such a dark color, and I am just fully obsessed with it. I mean, I'm obsessed with the Corrie kind of base already, and I can't resist it. It's so good. So yeah, I think this is going to be something really, really cool. I have a good idea of what pattern I'm going to make with it, but it will be a wee surprise because once again, I want to try and be the first person to make one. So yeah, so that was my only acquisitions. It's not a lot. It's only 2 projects worth. That's how I'm going to justify it to myself. And yeah, so I'm so sorry I was away for so long. I was knitting away, and you know, life got in the way. Life didn't get away. It's just, it is life. This is what happens. And so pretty chill couple of weeks coming up. So I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to film again in 3 weeks time, as I usually do. And yeah, hopefully I'll have, you know, gone to Loop and been to Biean, met Aimée from Biean. Aimée would be fun, and picked up some new bits, so that's all coming up. And yeah, finishing the Billie, finishing the socks, and casting on some fun things. And yes, podcast recommendation, of course. This is something I would have recommended much earlier, but obviously I haven't filmed in ages. But it is Kalila from Copy Cali. It's more Copy Cali is where her new podcast is. She is a super accomplished maker and crafter and content creator, but she has started doing podcasts now. And I love her, and I'm obsessed with her and her makes and her style and her vibe and her energy. And I'm so excited to see her grow from strength to strength in this little like knitting community that we have. So definitely check her out. And yeah, other than that, it's more or less it, you know. Yeah. Tell me how you're doing. How you doing? What you working on? You must have gotten tons of things too. Do you have 7 finished objects like me? I'm sure you do. I want to hear all about it. So comment below. Tell me how things are going and what you're up to. And if you're planning any spring knits, any slipovers, any tees, any, you know, linen stuff, or are you just sticking in wool like I am? Really happy to be back again. And yeah, check me out on places where you can check me out, and I will talk to you next time. Bye. This is where I talk about I am out of practice, you guys.